Hello, and welcome to episode number 22 of Reset Diaries. In this episode, I heard of something absolutely new. Have you heard of this word called Matrescence? Now, it's a profound transformation that women go through when they become mothers. It's kind of like adolescence, but for motherhood. This term was coined by an anthropologist, Diana Raphael, in the 1970s, and it highlighted the physical, emotional, social, and psychological changes that come with motherhood. So today I'm chatting with Sara Pantry, a senior workplace leader from LinkedIn, who is just passionate about supporting new moms through her community initiative From Me to We. Sara shares her journey back to work after maternity leave, the challenges she faced, and then how now she's building this supportive community to help other struggling mothers. And also we discussed a lot about how today employers can or are creating more inclusive workspaces for parents. So tune in and listen to this fabulous conversation. Hello, Sara. Welcome to Reset Diaries. Very happy to have you here.
Thank you so much. And I'm so happy to be here and be talking to you today. So thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Sara. So we have a lot to unpack today in this session. You are a senior workplace leader at LinkedIn, and you are a champion or an advocate speaking about women returning to work after maternity leave. So I want to touch base a little bit about your own journey first. So let's set the stage with that, and then how you found your North Star in this whole mission of mothers returning to work.
Yeah, sure. So my journey really, I've always worked in workplace, so creating culture and environments for people to do their best work, whichever company I happen to be at. So when I was in London, I was working for Burberry. When I moved to Singapore 9 years ago, it was with ISS managing the British Embassy contract, and now at LinkedIn. So I've always had a real passion for people creating those kind of cultures where people can thrive. And it's just something that's always lit my fire and kind of going through and doing that. Then when I became pregnant with my son, I applied the success measures that I had always applied to every other aspect of my life.
Yeah.
So, I read every book. I think I must have read about 10 books. I did all the courses. I had lists of the things that we needed to do. I also, much to my husband's protest sometimes of making him read these books and do these courses and everything with me. And I was like, right, we've done everything that we can do. We have our birth plan. We've been to the classes. We've got all the things. We've got all the knowledge. We are ready to have this baby. And I was not ready to have this baby. It impacted me in ways that I hadn't even considered. I've always been a very outgoing person, a connector, always very social, always very clear on where it is that I'm going and what I want to achieve and in control of that journey. And when I had my son, I literally was just catapulted into this world of ambiguity, of questioning myself, the very harsh inner critic, because that expansion from me to we of being a mother and having this beautiful baby boy in my arms suddenly made me think, well, if I make the wrong choice here, it's not just me that suffers. Actually, it's him. And it paralyzed me in that way. So I was looking for a lot of external validation, which then meant that I was actually doing things that didn't sit right. And it just was not recognizing who I had become, not recognizing the feelings that I had. And no one else was really talking about it. Even in the mums groups that I was in, it wasn't something that was really being discussed. So I was like, it must be me that's broken then. Because if I'm really struggling for this and everyone else is doing it, I have to try harder. So I need to be more on top of things to make this work. And that just must be what motherhood is.
True.
It wasn't the kind of idolized picture of what I thought a mother would be. Not that it was all bad. I loved this baby and I loved being a mum, but it was very difficult to identify that shift in who I was. And 5 months after having my baby, I went back to work to an amazing company. LinkedIn are very well set up to be supporting parents coming back from maternity leave and paternity leave with benefits, mentors, coaching. And I also had a fantastic boss at the time. But I when I came back in, I was like, there's no real resources to say how to do this. There's so many resources on how to get pregnant, how to be pregnant, how to deliver your baby, and maybe 2 or 3 months postpartum,
Yeah.
and then nothing. And that transition of coming back into work, I found really challenging, even with the amazing support that I had within my company, which I feel very privileged to have. And from conversations that I had with other people, they didn't have that support. And even with me with that support, I actually started to get panic attacks. I got anxiety for the first time in my life. And 6 months after returning to work, I had my first panic attack. And I was like, wow, okay, this isn't what this is meant to be. There
Yeah.
has to be a different way. It was really the trigger point for me to go and do some research as to what is happening. And I came across a TED talk around matrescence.
Mhm.
So, matrescence is the transformation a woman goes through when she becomes a mother. It's just like adolescence. We know what that
Mm.
is, and we
Mm.
support our teenagers and our tweens through that process. We give them space, we give them support, we nurture them. We understand that there's that huge change in identity that they're going through. The, the changes that a woman goes through in matrescence is even more profound than those changes in adolescence, yet it's silent and we don't know what it is.
Yeah.
And I remember just watching this TED talk and just bursting into tears and thinking, oh my God, this is something real. It's not in my head. It's something that's profound that's happening. And I then went and retrained as a matrescence practitioner to learn about this with an amazing woman called Amy Taylor Kabaz through the Rising Mama movement. From there, being a huge advocate for working mums understanding what matrescence is so that you can actually change with a conscious choice of how you're doing things, but also kind of bringing the awareness into workplaces, into leadership, and creating programs and communities that support people going through this so that they don't have to do it on their own.
Yeah. Interesting. And when I was researching for my own podcast, Reset Diaries, I figured out like there were some top 10 reasons when you face that immense reset in life. And for new mothers returning to work, it's one of the huge resets, which you rightly said nobody talks about. There's no playbook, and you just assume in your head that, okay, everybody's doing it. Maybe I need to push more. Maybe I'm not enough. Maybe I'm not a good mother, or I can't balance both. So you start questioning all about. It's like literally the existential crisis coming in post motherhood. But as you've been talking about return to work, and studies have shown that 1 in 3 women struggle with confidence with return to work. And you've spoken about that you've had amazing bosses, team, and support system. But how did you manage your own self doubt in those early months or weeks, or how long did it last for you?
Yeah, I think motherhood is something that we expect to just instinctively
Mm.
know what to do. And that's what I thought it was. And I was so hard on myself, so critical that that one thing that I'm supposed to know how to do just to feed my baby, I wasn't able to do it. And it was really tough, like that being able to meet myself with grace and being able to understand that this is a process that I'm learning, that you're not supposed to have this perfect at the beginning. It was something that was really alien to me because I've always been a high performer. I've always held myself to really high standards, and I've always tried to give 110% in everything that I do. So being catapulted into that world of, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know if this is the right thing. And like I said, that inner critic voice, what I have learned to do over the last 2 years is to catch it. So I've actually given my inner critic a name. Her name is Gertrude. So when Gertrude comes up, I catch it and I actually tell her to F off. First of all, because it makes me laugh. Like I'm catching those thoughts first
Yeah.
of all. And then I'm thinking about how I respond to that. Well, usually my response when it comes in from a motherhood perspective is, I'm only 3 years older as a mum. I wouldn't expect my toddler to know this. So it's being able to catch those thoughts and really kind of figuring out a way that feels good for you in how to do that. And also realizing that it's just a thought. You're holding yourself to a standard that maybe is not your standard. Maybe it's something that's been passed down through your
Societal
family or your
standard.
society or the way that you've been taught at school or,
Mm.
all of these things in here. and being able to take some time to actually understand where they're coming from, to then decide yourself which standards you're going to hold yourself to, means that you can manage that expectation a lot easier. But that's
Right.
a process that I've had to go through over the last 3 years.
So you still catch Gertrude? You still catch
Yeah,
her?
every day.
Wow.
It's like muscle that you are actually developing, right? You wouldn't
Yeah.
go out and run a marathon without doing the training. It's the
Yeah.
same of how you are actually catching that inner critic in a way that feels good. But then how do you cultivate that into a positive way, or give yourself grace to say, actually, this doesn't matter?
Right. I love this strategy of catching that inner critic, giving it a name, and then just speaking back to it and
Mm.
process that emotion. Love it. Love this thing. And as you rightly said, kids don't know. They don't need a perfect mother. They just need a happy mother.
Yeah. And sometimes you don't need to be happy.
Yeah.
Right? When I was thinking of like, what is it a good mum mean to me? And it was
Mm,
like being present, being kind,
mm,
being
mm.
loving, never getting angry, all these kind of things. And
Yes.
actually, if you strip back, that's not what I want my son to see as real life. Like,
Mm,
life is real, it's messy. Sometimes
mm,
I'm going to make mistakes. Sometimes I do get angry, but
mm,
I want to show that to my son how I come back from that afterwards. How do I apologize? What's the process that we go through to be able to deal with these things?
mm.
Because perfect doesn't exist.
Yep.
Yeah, so
Yep.
it's being able to feel those emotions and move through them in a way that, for me, I'm teaching my son this is what life really is.
Right. So Sarah, let's shift a little bit towards the professional front now. And so, what has been your experience? You speak to a lot of new mothers in your workplace and also outside because you're an advocate and you've created this community. So, have you seen any patterns as to what do the mothers struggle with most when they return to work?
I think from my own personal experience, and as well as, within our communities, of how do I do this? How do I still deliver in the same way as I did
Mm,
before I had my baby to now?
mm,
And the answer is, you don't.
mm,
You can't go back to exactly how you were previously. You then now have to look at leaning into who you're becoming and
mm,
figuring out how to make that work in a different way. So, yes, you still need to deliver at work, but it's being really clear on what are your success measures? What do you need to succeed? So,
mm,
having the confidence to be able to ask for some of those things. Like for me, when I first went back to work, it was I couldn't start till 10 o'clock because I used to pump a large pump in the morning, which means I didn't
mm,
leave till 9:30. It was having the confidence to ask for what I needed.
mm,
And then, like, it's also giving yourself time to adjust. We're just talking about that inner critic or that grace that you're giving yourself to learn, relearn, figure out how you want to show up and how you want to deliver, and making sure that you're working with your company or your boss or whoever it is to say, hey, these are the things that I need. This is how I think we could measure this over the next, 2, 3, 6 months or whatever that looks like.
mm,
And then one of the best pieces of advice I'd say that I was ever given when I came back to work was be where your feet are.
mm,
So when you're at work, be at work. Smash it, do whatever you need to do, be that boss lady and deliver. When
mm,
you're at home, be at home.
mm.
Put your phone away, be present with your family, with your partner or your baby, and really kind of enjoy those moments and be there. So you're
Mm.
being present in both situations. And that really helped me. And I know it's helped a lot of other women as they're kind of managing that transition.
Right. I like this thing what you said that lean on to the new you who you have become because clearly you are not the same person. You have changed physically, physiologically, emotionally. So you have to learn new behaviors and rewire your brain to understand new patterns and navigate your way around it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things that we don't get told and we don't
Hmm.
get taught
True.
when you're moving into motherhood, is that you are going to be a completely different person.
Person. Yeah. Yeah.
And that is a good thing.
Yeah.
It's
Yep.
not that
Yep.
it's you are going to be upgrading so many skills, whether they're in empathy, whether they're in crisis management, whether, like whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
But it's also okay to mourn the person that you were. Like it's not that they're going to disappear completely, but there's other things now that have changed that fundamentally change who you are. And leaning into that, not
Mm.
trying to go back, because actually it's not
Mm.
possible to go back, but
Yeah.
leaning into who you are becoming
Yeah.
and enjoy that process of figuring out how you're showing up in the world and what that looks like. And it
Mm.
doesn't need to be perfect straight away. You're evolving as as you move through this journey, you will keep evolving, and that's a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, maybe that's the biggest struggle, that you try to fall back on your old normal, but your new normal has shifted already. So you need to also shift along with that new normal.
There's this thing of like bounce back, right?
Yeah.
Bounce back to the body that you had before, bounce back to the life that you
Mm.
had before, but
Mm.
actually it's not possible.
Yeah.
And it's you want to bounce forward. So yes, you may,
And
you want to
also
be healthy.
the rush. You want to bounce back to your old body again. You want to bounce back to your old outings with your friends again. Like everything we want to do at pace also. Like, let's bring life back to the old normal.
But I think one of the things that motherhood has given me, and it's been a beautiful thing, is the chance to slow down, to
Mm.
actually soften and sit in a time where you can just be.
Mm.
We are in a society where it's fast moving.
Mm.
If you are not doing something, then you are lazy or you are unproductive. You don't
Mm.
just sit and do nothing. And actually, if you look at the society that we have, we're so burnt out, we're so highly strung, we're
Yeah.
always moving. Motherhood is such a beautiful opportunity to slow down,
Yeah.
to actually catch up with yourself and soften into, that more feminine energy
Yep.
instead of being in the always doing, always
Go.
moving, always achieving.
Yeah.
Actually nurture
Mm.
and be creative and even go back to some of those kind of pieces that maybe you haven't done since you've been a child, like if
Mm.
you were into art or creating things or doing things, but it gives you that beautiful opportunity that often we don't know how to do because we've been conditioned to
Mm.
be always moving, always achieving, always doing. And
Yeah,
I
you're
think if
right.
people can actually embrace that,
Mm.
it's such a beautiful experience,
Yeah.
but we
Yeah.
don't know how to do it. So
Yeah.
then we push to go back to where we were before.
Yeah. And I think slowdown aids to that high performance also, because you're like regenerated and ready to go all in once again.
Yeah. And what I have learned within this process, within motherhood and within my role is when I truly rest, when I do give my body a chance to slow down, I can do more.
Yeah. 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 All right. So, Sarah, I was reading some statistics that a study shows that about 57% of working mothers, they feel, or let's say new mothers who are returning to work, they feel invisible at work. And there could be many reasons for that. So, if you could give like that one golden piece of advice to a new mother returning to work tomorrow, what would that?
So I know I mentioned it earlier, but it would definitely be be where your feet are. Like actually just be present in whatever you're doing and also find your tribe
Hmm.
where you're going
Hmm.
into. Because when you come back to work, you are coming out of a community of new mums, whether you've been in antenatal classes or play
Yeah.
dates, etc., etc. And then suddenly you're put back into a corporate environment. So you don't have the support from those people because you're not seeing them anymore because you're at work, but you also don't have anyone that gets what you're going through.
Hmm.
So really have a think about who is it in your organization that can be your tribe at work, whether that's
Hmm.
a mentor, a coach, other mums that are there already. Like reach out
Hmm.
and find that tribe of people within your workplace as well, which is so important. So
Yeah.
you're not feeling that you're isolated and you're on your own. Because
Hmm.
coming back and, pumping and, doing all the things, it can be really overwhelming. And
Yeah.
sometimes just having someone or a few people that you can just have your lunch with or have a cup of tea with or,
Mm.
kind of share stories. It's such an amazing network to build that you can move forward with.
So basically, don't try to suffer alone at the workplace and, crib and go back home unhappy, rather than just find your support system within the organization, reach out to people. And I
Yeah.
think we don't reach out, but there are plenty of people who are ready to kind of help and talk, but it's just a matter of reaching out.
And if you don't feel comfortable doing it at work, this is part of the reason of some of the programs that I'm bringing to Singapore. We have From Me to We, which is a working mothers lean in circle community. There's
Mm,
120 women in there that are all in the same kind of boat. These are the kind of touch points where we come together once a month,
mhm,
or through Return Ready, being paired with a return to work mentor of someone that's been there and done it already, that can help you through that process of returning in. There are elements of other support groups and other communities outside, but yeah, find who they are,
mm.
people that are also in the same situation as you, because that's where you need that support from, because you shouldn't have to
Right.
do it on your own.
Yeah, I love this From Me to We Ready, and it's in your LinkedIn bio also. So I want to speak about that in the professional context. Let's say there are managers or colleagues who are maybe not sensitized enough about, a new mother returning to work. Do you suggest any practical things they can do to make a new mother feel more welcomed and make her feel seen, heard, and visible?
I think the biggest thing is, don't assume. You need to meet her where she is, because everybody's going to be different.
Mm,
My experience would be different to yours, to
mm,
Emma, to whoever it is coming through. So being able to have that open and honest conversation with them. How are you feeling? What do we need?
mm,
What do you need coming back to work?
mm,
And making sure that the basics are there. So
mm,
making sure that her laptop, her email address, that
mm.
she's got access to a mother's room and back into the office, and being able to have those check-ins. So it's really, what I would suggest is, make sure the basics are there, and then ask, what do you need? And it might not be that you can provide everything that they do
Mm,
need, but having
mm,
that open and honest
mm,
conversation and having that supportive piece there is huge. I mean, I was talking to a mum just yesterday who's going back to work in a sales role, and she'd been out for 4 months, yet coming back, her quota hadn't been amended. And then going into the new year, she didn't have the pipeline. So she feels like she's having to work double as hard coming back
mm,
after having this maternity leave off. And it means that she wants to leave. She doesn't want to
mm,
stay. And one of the biggest pieces with, mothers or even dads coming back after parental leave is,
mm,
so many of them leave within a year of coming back.
mm, mm.
You want to be able to utilize the new skills that they have been downloaded with, looking at that
True.
empathy, the crisis management, the EQ. These are the skills that we need in workplaces to increase that belonging. So, be aware of those things. It's not that they're half out.
Mm.
Actually, let's try and make sure that we're keeping them in and meeting them where they are with what they need.
I love it. And speaking from my own experience, I think when I returned to work post maternity break, I think there was a male colleague who just asked me, "How are you feeling?" And that was enough for me to break down. Like, I was in such a vulnerable position. For someone to ask me, "How are you feeling?" was, it made me feel seen. And
Yes.
yeah,
And
I
that's
love this.
such a big thing, right? Feeling seen and feeling heard.
Mm,
Now, I know that business keeps going and
yeah.
everyone is very busy, but being able to acknowledge and empathize is huge.
Yeah.
And that's what we all want and need, right? So it's that thing of, like, they're not just going to pick up on where they left off, right? It might
Yeah.
be that they need a re-induction. It might be that
Mm,
you need to go through and think about some of the KPIs or the performance matrix.
mm,
Because I've heard of so many people coming back to work, and within a month of coming back to work, they're on a performance review. We need to do this differently. Leaders, companies, if you want to keep the talent, then people that are being supported through these huge life moments, that's where that stickiness and that loyalty comes in.
mm,
Like, there are things that we can do that aren't a huge cost,
mm,
that can make a huge difference. Peer-to-peer mentoring is one. The mother's room is another one. Having those check-ins, just those check-ins to
mm.
see how they're going and meeting them where they are. All these things actually help that experience moving forward for that person coming back.
Right. So, from the lens of workplace and employee experience, are you seeing some broader trends in terms of how companies are working to make these kind of transitions smoother? Is there any talk around it, or what are some of the best practices you have seen?
Yeah, I think that companies are starting to look at it. You can see more people talking about it and people
Mm,
being more vocal about it.
mm,
Look at Patagonia. They
mm.
have on-site childcare and they now retain 100% of their returning parents. Like some of the things that we're doing in LinkedIn, we have return to work coaching. We have Expectin, which is the peer-to-peer mentoring program for mums and dads coming back to
Mm,
work. There's other benefits that are coming through there. Like some of the banks, you can see that they are increasing the paternity leave to the same as maternity leave.
yeah.
And like there's a lot of these kind of things that are starting to come through, which are all helpful.
Mm,
But I think there's also an element of we need to allow our people to turn up who they are.
mm,
Like parenting out loud, like not to feel bad for leaving at 5:30 to go and pick your child up from daycare, or if there is an assembly, like you being able to go and do it and do these kind of things and not feeling like you are having to do this under the radar. It's
mm.
the same for any caring. It's not just for parents. It might
Yeah,
be you have elderly
agree.
parents, or it might be that you have someone that's had an accident or is sick. We need to be able to create these environments in workplaces where people can actually turn up and be their true authentic selves
Mm,
instead of trying to hide that
mm,
element,
mm.
and support them through it as they go.
Right. This is great to know, Sarah, that so many organizations have started to work in this direction. Although I would still say it's not where we would imagine the world to be. But on general front, also, I see people are more okay to, not object that you have to go to see your child's recital. Generally, now there's like more acceptance towards these kind of reasons if you have to leave workplace.
Yeah, I think from a company perspective or a leadership perspective, it's shifting the matrix that we're looking at what
Mm,
matters. So instead of it being presence, of actually being in the office all of the time from, 8 till 6, it's actually looking at the outcome. So what
mm.
are people delivering? Instead of it being availability,
Outcome
you know,
based.
yeah, instead of it being availability, it's exactly that. It's outcomes. So I feel like that is a shift, and it's going to take time. We had a bit of an accelerator through COVID,
Mm,
because it's not just about flexibility, right? It's
mm.
actually looking at the output that we're getting from these people, because
True,
often
true.
we're focusing on the wrong things,
Right,
right?
right.
And I think I agree, we're not where we should be, but we are starting to see some of those shifts and changes. But I think we also need to be able to step into our own vulnerabilities and share our own stories, whether that's our return to work stories or our motherhood journeys. Because if we don't start sharing them and other people being able to relate to them, it's still going to be that undercurrent there.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm really, really pleased with the communities and the initiatives through from Me to We, and especially to Return Ready, that's just launched, around being able to bring some of this to the forefront so that people know
Yeah.
where they can get the support that they need.
Right. Wonderful. All right, Sarah, we are almost towards the end. And since you spoke about this wonderful lean in circle that you have created of 100 plus women, so I want to ask you, what's your vision for this community and how do you foresee you can impact more mothers in Singapore or wider in the coming years?
Yeah, I mean, for Me to We was launched from a need. It's what I wanted when I
Mm,
went back to work, of being able to have a community of women who were in the same situation as me. But I also wanted to start to learn more about matrescence, ikigai, have the support of the network, but also be able to learn the skills to maybe do this differently.
mm.
Whether it's around hormone balancing or finances, or the divine feminine. There's so many different elements that we go
Yeah.
through. So that's where that community came. Hoping to launch this out globally as we move forward over the next year or so. But one of the pieces that I'm really excited about at the moment is Return Ready. So it's just been launched. We're just going through a beta test stage of peer-to-peer mentoring. So we have 15 amazing, we're calling them mum mentors, who have been through that transition of going back to work within their different fields. So some in marketing, law, teachers. There's an amalgamation of different industries there.
Mhm.
And we have the availability for people to sign up as a mentee if they're going back to work. So this is specifically for people that are going back to work from maternity leave.
Okay.
And you can be paired with a mentor, a mum mentor, to guide you through that transition. So having someone there to listen, hold space for you, validate your feelings, and also share their own experiences of what worked and what didn't work of going back to work. So that has launched very recently, the last week or so, and we've got our
Congratulations.
first 10 mentees that have been signed up. And we are really looking to grow that community project because it's all done from volunteers. So the Tiger
Okay.
team that are working with me from Return Ready to the mum mentors that are volunteering their time to support other women coming back to
Yeah.
work. And we have the option for you to sign up as a mentor and to sign up as a mentee. So that's something that I'm really passionate about because I truly believe that you shouldn't just be able to get the support if you have the disposable income to afford it. Everybody should be able to
Yeah.
have the resources to have this type of support. And that's why we have created this as kind of like a grassroots up program within the community to
Oh.
ensure that we're able to deliver that.
Is it one-on-one or is it many to one?
One-on-one. So you
One-on-one.
would be, so if you are a mentee, you can go onto the website and you can view the mum mentor profiles. We ask you to put your top 3 matches who you think that would be
Okay.
best for you. Then we
Okay.
go through a manual matching process and
Okay.
you would be paired up with your mum mentor. We usually say the relationship would be between 3 to 6 months, depending on which part of your journey you are going back to work, and you would be meeting up with them one on.
Oh, nice. Is this only for Singapore moms or it's open to everyone?
At the moment, through the beta test, it's just with Singapore, but we
Okay.
are going to be looking at extending this reach through APAC and hopefully globally. So, like first and second horizons of going through there. So yeah, if anyone is interested, I'm sure you'll be able to find the details in the bio of the session. And please come and have a look at the website, and we would love to see as many people as possible going through as
Sure.
mentors and mentees.
We would put the website details on the podcast link below so that if anybody is interested, they can have a look. And this was my following question, that do you want to formalize this into a structured program? And I see you have already taken a baby step in that direction. So congratulations for that.
Thank you.
Well, this is it. Thank you very much, Sara, for your time. And I had lovely time. And there's so many things you shared about can cope up with this whole anxiety and uncertainty and dealing with ambiguity. And I think it's of great value for anyone who is planning to join the work again or who's already a working mom. And thank you very much for all the great work you're doing for the community.
My pleasure. And thank you so much for having me today. It's been great talking to you.